Hello, and welcome to our little podcast for newcomers. Newcomers to what? I don't know. If you're in food recovery, we have found the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous to be very useful in recovering from compulsive eating. So it works for more things than alcohol, which many of you know who are listening, but some people don't know that. So I'm letting you know that the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous helps with really, I think, almost any compulsive behavior that you can't seem to stop. And for us right now, that's food and eating. So if you're looking on for information on Overeaters Anonymous, which is a program that we happen to belong to, although this is not an Overeaters Anonymous podcast, I recommend you go to oa.org and also check the description below the podcast, because I'm going to put so many fun links in there, our email address, our website, our podcast. We have it'll be on Podbean, and it's going to be on YouTube, and then we have a WhatsApp chat room for anyone who wants to join us in there and ask any questions and just chit chat or just lurk and listen to us sharing things with other people. Whatever works for you, we're good with that. So about now, you're probably wondering, what the hell did I just click on? Well, you somehow magically clicked onto a podcast for compulsive eaters. And we kind of gear it towards newcomers, because you know what, we're pretty much newcomers too. Most of us have been around, I guess, about a year. None of us has that many years in program, but we're very passionate about it, and we have computers, and I have a little know-how, and we decided to just start a podcast and start talking, and it really helps us, and hopefully it helps other people as well. My name is Carol, and I'm a compulsive eater amongst many other things. And then we have Rebecca A.
Hiya, I'm Rebecca A. from London in the UK.
And Paul G.
Yes, I am Paul G, and I'm from Huntington Beach, California, very close to Disneyland, and I'm happy to be here.
That's right, Huntington Beach. I forgot earlier. And our special guest, Megan M. in Minneapolis, who has a tan, oddly, for a girl in Minneapolis. That's very rare if you're listening from the UK.
It's true. Hi, everyone. My name is Megan M. I'm a compulsive overeater from Minneapolis, quite close to Canada, but it is 90 degrees up here right now. So even Minnesota is a tan. I know.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, usually it's very cold there. So that's the joke. If you're not, even if you are an American and just don't know where the hell Minneapolis is, some people just don't know. So in our last podcast, we talked about abstinence and what it means to us. It's very personal to every person, and no one can tell you what your abstinence is. But if you want to hear more about that, I suggest you listen to our past podcast. This is our 7th podcast, lucky number 7. So there's 6 other ones for you to listen to. And we try to keep them short to like 30 minutes or so, maybe a little longer, sometimes even a slight bit shorter. And like I said before, you'll find us on YouTube and Podbean. And then we have a website, which is 164forever.com. And all of that information will be in the description below. So this week, we are going to talk about something called two-way prayer. Not very controversial. And I'm not even sure why I picked it, because it seems like a weird advanced topic for a newcomer thing. Like I feel like we should have done all the steps first or something. But the great thing about two-way prayer, if you don't know what it is, it's you sit with pen and paper and you pray, meditate, whatever, you get all relaxed and centered, and you let the thoughts that come to you from your higher power, you just let them flow, and you just jot them down on paper. And if you're in a 12-step group like we are, you're always looking for God's guidance in your life. You want to go where God wants you to go and talk to who he wants you to talk to and say what he wants you to say. And you want to be helpful and of service. That's kind of our goal when we do the steps, and when we've put down the food and got our higher power has helped us to recover from compulsive eating. We pay God back, I guess if you want to say it that way, by helping other people and following what we feel God is guiding us to do. And Bill W., who wrote the big book, or most of it, he was originally a member of something called the Oxford Group. You can Google it if you are not familiar, the Oxford Group. And they practiced something called two-way prayer. Now, it's not exclusive to them. I've heard many people in church as a kid just talking about they have a board and they pray, and when God gives them inspiration, they write it on a board or something. So people practice all versions of this. I know people who, like I used to always take a notepad when I went hiking in the mountains, because always I would get all these great thoughts in the mountains. And when I started doing two-way prayer this week for the podcast, I realized, you know what, that was like two-way prayer. I was listening to my inner voice, my inner guidance, and I would write the best stuff down when I was hiking. And so it was almost instinctively that I was practicing something very similar to two-way prayer. There's a 4-page pamphlet that they used to hand out in the Oxford group, and it is included in a book that is not a program book. It's like a for-profit book by a guy named Wally Payton. It's called How to Listen to God. And I read the whole book because I'm a nerd. And inside the book, that is like an inch thick, there's 4 little pages, which are the original pamphlet. And there's a website, which is, what is it? twowayprayer.org, all spelled out, TWOWAYPRAYER.org. And I'll shove that in the description below as well. And then I'm sure people have just done their own thing. I mean, you don't have to do what someone tells you to do. It's more about just getting in touch with your higher power and listening. And in the pamphlet I read, it talks about, and I recorded the pamphlet, so it's actually in our podcast channel on YouTube. Right before the recording, right before this podcast, will be me recording the two-way prayer pamphlet so that we could use it for this. And why don't we start? So we all got into it this week, and I'll be honest, none of us is big two-way prayer people. We've all heard about it. We've heard people saying, oh, it's amazing, two-way prayer, you got to do it. We've all heard that, right? And we've all meant to practice it, right? I think we've all, I'm speaking for myself. I've heard it a bunch of times and thought, wow, I want to do that. And then I don't do it. And probably because I'm afraid I'm going to be told something I don't like, right? I'm afraid to hear what God has to say to me. But we'll get into more of this in a little bit. Why don't we first, Paul, you gave it a try, right?
Yeah.
Let's hear Paul.
It was something, like Carol said, probably I've done something in the same manner. For example, on my 11th step, I just heard in the last week or two a speaker say they just hold a pin when they're doing their 11th step in the morning. I listen to kind of a podcast on awakening, and they read that, and I just take notes, and things come to me, and it's pretty cool. So when it came to two-way prayer, we've talked about this amongst us for a few weeks. And what I really got this morning is that I had been procrastinating from doing it. And lo and behold, I had a fear of doing this two-way prayer. And I thought, well, what if I do it wrong? What if I ask my question and God doesn't answer? What if it gives me a lot of emotion I don't want to have at the moment? And I actually did a 10th step on that first thing this morning. And I let those go and jumped into doing two-way prayer. So if I rewind a few minutes, in the last few days, I've been looking at a website, Carol mentioned it, twowayprayer.org. And there's a gentleman named Father Bill W. that has been instrumental in kind of...
no relation?
Yeah, no. Yeah, thanks. Very good. He's been kind of reinvigorating this concept, as Carol mentioned. And so I went to the website, and the first thing that I did was I saw there was some introductory podcasts, and I listened to some of those podcasts. And I'm pretty much a softie. It's not too hard to move me to tears, but I was just moved to tears with the stories that were shared, and I was also surprised at how simple this really is to do. And none of the people that were doing it were monks. They were not priests. They were not gurus. They were people, just people that were in recovery, just like me. And I listened to one of his podcasts, Father Bill's podcast, and it was about quiet time. And he said that's a must in recovery. And I thought, okay. And it was really eye-opening. And I encourage you if you go to the website, you can listen to those examples of people doing them, people that just started, people that have been doing them for months, and people that have been doing a few years, people that uncovered some deep emotional stuff that they had an opportunity to heal from. So I was impressed in it, and it definitely moved me to be willing to try this. And I did it this morning, and I had a question about taking an action in my life, and I just wasn't sure what direction it should be. And the answer that I got was quite astounding. I mean, I believe that I got a message from God. And I sound silly saying that. I got a message from God. It came in. It was in the post office, but
I always feel crazy. Sometimes I'll be
Yeah.
talking to our fellow Rita, who was on a previous podcast, and I'll say, God told me this. And I go, man, that sounds crazy. What am I doing? You sound crazy.
Yeah, it was really, in my mind, it was quite extraordinary, and it definitely moves me to continue trying it. It wasn't a long process. It was maybe 10, 15 minutes. And one of the things I wondered when I was doing it is, okay, when does it stop? How long do I write? Do I have to just, until I get writer's cramp? What do I do? And it stopped. The flow of the information, it kind of paused, and then it went on a little bit longer, and then it stopped. And it's like, I guess that's over. So that's my experience with it.
Rebecca, did you give it a try this week? Have you been doing it before the podcast, Rebecca?
Yeah, I've got to say, I love two-way prayer. I think it's fabulous. I heard somebody sharing about two-way prayer at a meeting last year, and I was like, oh, and I Googled it, and I found the Oxford group roots and just the concept of it. And lots of people talk about the idea of writing letters to your higher power, and your higher power writing back, or you writing back. And it's just that kind of inner part of yourself, the inner knowing writing back sometimes, or sometimes it's God, whatever, but you get those words that you need. And I've been practicing it every day since November. And yeah, I'm hooked on it. I think it's great. And just like what Paul said, my prayer and meditation is kind of like quiet time. Sometimes I have a bit of music. Usually I try and get as quiet as possible. There's no kind of set structure, but at the end of some quiet time, I open up my book and I write. And whatever comes out is what comes out. And also I wanted to say that the Wally Patton book is not readily available in Europe from what, it was quite hard to find that book, but there is a book called When a Man Listens, and that has the pamphlet also. And the pamphlet you can find it online. Also, there are, I haven't been to them, but there are some meetings where people do their two-way prayers and then they share them with a partner to kind of practice it. And that's quite nice as an idea. But yeah, this is kind of pure kind of step 11. And for those who are not at step 11 yet, the whole idea about it is that we sought through prayer and meditation to make conscious contact with God. And it doesn't mean that you definitely did. It just means that you seek, you try, you basically try. And we're all on this journey of trying. And it's the trying, it's like a kind of kids' sports day. Do you guys call it sports day? Where, everyone gets a medal because they show up, It's like through seeking, through trying, you get a medal. And just like Paul yesterday, when I wrote my prayer to God, I had an interview and I was writing, hey God, I'm scared about this interview. I don't even know if it's right for me. I don't know what I'm supposed to do. I feel not prepared. And the words I got weren't what I expected to hear, but they were exactly right. And sometimes I'm like, is this me? Is this God? You know, but we can test it. We can ask our fellows. We can test it by kind of checking, well, is this a loving thing? Does this kind of fit in with being of service? Does this fit spiritual principles? That kind of thing. The other thing I thought when Carol suggested two-way prayer is that in the big book, I think it's on page 85, it's starting to talk about step 11, and it says, we mustn't be shy on the matter of prayer. Better men are using it constantly. And I think, like, yeah, the idea of prayer, for some people it's ingrained. Usually I just only prayed when I was in some kind of crisis. But like using prayer constantly, you know, even saying, oh, God told me this, and I think God is directing me to that. It feels unusual. But yeah, the big book is saying, don't be shy about it. We need to get into this. And all it is a conversation, you know, even if the conversation is, I'm not sure, I'm not fully trusting you, I'm not feeling connected. But if we're there to listen to the response of, hey, don't worry, I've got you anyway. Or hey, just keep taking those steps. Or hey, just keep pausing. That's a conversation. Yeah. Also, like, I opened up this book called When a Man Listens. And it had this pamphlet. And in it says, God's guidance is as freely available as the air we breathe. And that really made me just feel like, because I think as addicts, we love to make things so complicated, but actually the guidance is kind of all around. It's just about pausing long enough to get it or to hear it. And I'm no Zen monk. I'm no kind of spiritual savant. I'm just like Joe Blogs or whatever. And if I can use it, yeah, anyone can use it. And sometimes they're super short, like, hey, God, hey, I want to connect with you. I'm showing up, but I'm not feeling it. And then the response is like, hey, girl, yeah, I see you. I see you. But yeah.
Great. Thanks, Rebecca. Megan, our special guest, Megan from Minneapolis. What's your experience? Were you two-way praying before this, or did you do it for the podcast?
Before this, I was a two-way prayer wannabe. You know, I would hear people share about it in meetings and be like, it has just totally changed my life, like totally connected me to my higher power. And I was like, oh yeah, like that makes sense. I need to do that. But you know, when we were talking earlier, someone shared like they were scared to try it because what if it didn't work? Like I was scared to try it because what if it did work? You know, before,
crickets, just crickets on the other
end. Oh, I love it.
Before recovery, I was so good at procrastinating, and I procrastinated by eating. Like whenever uncomfortable feelings popped up, instead of dealing with them, I would go eat something. If there was something that I was supposed to do or a problem, like I would just go and eat, and I would spend hours just eating, make some food, eat some more food. And now I don't do that. Now when problems pop up, I have to actually deal with them and face them. And so what if I two-way prayed with God and brought my problems to my higher power, and then like I got an answer? Like now I have a call to action. And so before this, no, I was like, two-way prayer, it makes sense in my mind. I was not prioritizing it. I'm not someone who's naturally good at like meditative practices. I have ADHD. Sitting still, listening, it's not something that I'm good at. It's something that I truly do need to practice. And I'm just such a perfectionist that all of that I have to let go and, you know, just listen, just put the pen to paper, just start writing. And so I loved practicing two-way prayer this week. And I also found that it gave me a permission to do it, because before the idea of two-way prayer was ever introduced to me, I just would have never thought of this as a way to connect to God. I would have been like, yeah, nice one, Meg. Like you write a letter to God and then you write back what you want God to be saying to you. Like I would not. It's like
Eat
it gave me,
cookies, darling.
yeah, exactly. It's like, you know, reading How to Listen and like trying this out gave me permission to actually like have God write a letter back to me and not, you know, just be like, I'm just writing to myself what I want to hear right now.
Right, ego.
Mhm.
Well, that's one of the things the pamphlet talks about too, is, you know, we only have one voice in our head, right? Like you guys have heard me kind of say in the past, I wish my bad part of me had a voice, like a cartoon voice, like I said, Snidely Whiplash, which 98% of people aren't going to know who I'm talking about. But he was just a cartoon from when we were kids. But you know, you knew when Snidely Whiplash was talking, he was a bad guy and he was suggesting something bad. So I do wish that, you know, that God had a different voice. But like the truth is, anything that communicates in our mind, it all has one voice, whether it's our ego, whether it's a good idea or a bad idea or a God thought or an evil thought, or, you know, bad thought or a happy thought or a negative thought. Like the voice is all the same. It's just in our mind. And so being able to distinguish the God thoughts from just the everyday thoughts or the ego thoughts. And that's why it also says to share what you wrote with someone else practicing two-way prayer. And they'll help you get a little, and I think a lot of us, when you write stuff down, you can kind of know as you glance at what you wrote, you know, like I know some people write essays, like Paul's God wrote him like an actual letter, and Megan, it sounds like, is getting an actual letter, like a pen pal letter, like a spiritual pen pal. Whereas I get like, mine is like, no one can see this, mine's like notes, like just like blurps, like little lines, like a little do this, do that. And like one of the ones last night was pretty, and I did not practice this before. I was like one of you guys, like, oh, that's, yes, two-way prayer. It's lovely. You should try it. Everybody should try it for sure. But I just, for me, I was positive I'm going to get messages. And part of, one of the rules, according to this group, is if you get a command from God, you have to do it or God's going to stop talking to you, right? Like, which is the Oxford group, pure Oxford group. I don't know if that's true or not, but it is taking seriously that if you're going to ask God for direction in your life, and he's going to, or she, or it, they, them, going to take the time, higher power, to give you some direction, that you should take that seriously and take action upon it. If you can actually determine that that is a direction from God, which, I mean, it sounds crazy that someone would be like, God spoke to me and I don't want it. Like, you know what I mean? Like if anyone was like, you know, I'm speaking to the real God, like, of course you're going to do it. Like, yes, what can I do, God? Yes, what can I do? You want me to do what? Like, but the reality is like, wow, what's he going to say? Like, I don't know. I don't know if I want to hear this. But so far I haven't gotten anything that was really like bad or anything. I mean, it's all good. Like even last night was super simple. And this is the thing that I have found since I started doing this every day, which has only been for like a week. Cause like everyone, like every other addict, I put it off to the last minute, right? I was like, oh shit, we're recording in like 3 days. I got to do this. I better start doing this. Like you're the one that made them do it. Like you have to do this. So now I'm doing it like every day, but I'm finding that even when I'm not literally sitting down to a formal quiet time, like when things get quiet, like last night at like 7:30, I was like, God, what would you have me do? And he was like, go read with your baby, which I was like, oh my gosh, I haven't read him a book in like a week. Mather's been reading him books. My partner has been reading him books. And I haven't been reading him books. So I sat down and boy, did he have the best time ever. We read books for 30 minutes and he was like, again, the same book over. I mean, and then my partner came in and was like, this is so cute hearing you guys read. He's having so much fun. And so just being open in any minute of the day to what God's direction is for you. I think that's what it's opened up for me, is being able to practice it on point and at any time of day. And when I get a message going, okay, you know what? Okay, I will go do that. I will call this person right now, you know, call this newcomer, whatever. Go ahead.
It's a muscle.
Yeah.
I think it's a muscle that we've got to start learning how to practice, asking God, listening and acting on it. And like, I'm not very good at it. Just like with kind of other resistance stuff, I do it one day and I'm like, yeah, doing this, and then it's a week and I haven't done it, but yet we're invited to keep on practicing that muscle. And I've got to say that, like, even though kind of writing is one of the tools of the program, and many people journal, I'm not much of a journaler. I just it's just like a bit loose and not structured. Whereas I can sit down and do the two-way prayer because I'm kind of like, it's a structure, it's part of my day.
Yeah.
So I'd say if you're not very good at journaling, try some two-way prayer.
Yeah, I agree.
You know what I liked was I saw something, or maybe it was in the podcast that I listened to, was that consider this as an experiment. I mean, doing the 12 steps is really an experiment in itself, but taking on two-way prayer, I looked at it as an experiment, and the experiment will work, the experiment won't work, who knows what results I'll get from it. And I think like Carol said, I think we know kind of when something comes through, if it says, "Dear Paul, please go rob a bank," I have a pretty good idea that's not a good thing to do. And, is it honest? I think there were 4 things to consider. Is it honest, pure, unselfish, and love or loving? And those work pretty good for me. And, for that one that I got about the bank, I just didn't pay attention to that one. So everything's going to be okay.
Your God told you to rob a bank?
No.
That's great.
And give to the poor, like a Robin Hood
Hood,
scenario.
like a spirit 12-stepping Robin Hood.
Exactly.
Yeah, what I found, one of the many things that I found to be particularly striking about two-way prayer is just like the answers to like questions that I've been carrying around for a while were right there, there's a lot going on in life right now, a lot of stuff that I've been carrying. And when I started two-way praying, I was like, I haven't been bringing like all of this stuff to my higher power. Like I certainly have not been slowing down and just listening. And it was just so striking, like the minute that I asked God, like boom, answers, thoughts were all there. And as far as like, I think that there are definitely moments where like, if you're like, is this me? Is this God? Like there are moments where you're like, no, this is God right now. Like you can feel it. It feels so good. And while I was doing the two-way prayer, a thought that I had was, I think that this is why like so many people in our nation like have so much anxiety or like are struggling with depression, because I think that we as humans, we are meant to be connected to our higher power. And so many of us fall into what I've been falling into of just like go, run, and never slowing down and never listening and never asking for guidance that like we don't have within ourselves, like that we need to reach to a power greater than ourselves to find.
Oh my gosh, absolutely. Like literally, I was just listening to another podcast from the AA speaker, Bob D, and he was saying just that like, though I thought that what I wanted was more food, I thought what I wanted was more status or more control or better looking partner or whatever I wanted, but actually I had this longing for unity with my higher power, my higher whatever, I had this longing for unity. And I think so many people maybe have a longing for unity that they don't even realize.
Yeah, there's like a spiritual side to humans, I think. And this is also like, if you're an atheist and you're listening, I know we're throwing the G word hard and fast, right and left. So sorry about that, because I know that's a very offensive word to some people. It just comes naturally to me. And I don't even mean like old Christian or Jewish God. I just, good orderly direction, the universe, fate, reality, whatever it is. But the truth is that like when you sit and get quiet, the answers will come. And so, it's funny, as I've been writing, sometimes I'm like, I knew that, like, you know what I mean? Like being able to just write down without fear, these thoughts that come in your head. And like it says, you write them down, because we have so many thoughts that pass through our head through the day, and we never write them down, and then they're gone. They just vanish, and you just don't think about them again, right? You just move on with your day, you get going. But when you've written them on paper and you can look back at them a little while later, and you can see, and some of the things that I got in two-way prayer sounded stupid, and I would follow these directions and I would say, oh man, that was a big mistake. And then the next day something would happen that showed me that, wow, that actually was a good thing that I did that. Maybe at the moment it didn't quite turn out the way that I thought it would, but it started a conversation that then led to a healing or a process. Like, I found it to be like just very useful. And I think the great thing about it is it doesn't have to be about huge things. Like it can be literally the smallest, like reading to my son, the littlest things in your life to the biggest things in your life. And that's kind of the point, is that there is some sort, I'm sure there are a few people that would argue this, but I think there's a spiritual side to human beings, whether it's God or your intuition or fate, whatever we've discussed. But there are powers and forces and coincidences and things that happen to where no matter who you are, you're like, what is going on? There is like something out there that I don't see that's happening. And who knows if the God is the right word? I don't even know. But writing these thoughts down and then following them, even as just this game, this trust game, it's like a spiritual trust game, this two-way prayer, and it says, you might make mistakes, but if you honestly make a mistake in God's name, God will help you fix it. So don't worry about that. And again, you should read the whole pamphlet, which I won't do now because it takes 9 minutes to read, but it is recorded. And in there, did anyone else have anything they want to add about two-way prayer? Paul's pulling out a notebook. What do you got there, Paul?
So two things. My logical mind always starts with looking at definitions when we do this, and I just offer these two definitions. Prayer, it's an earnest request or wish. That one was kind of the non-secular, or just non-religious one. The other is a devout petition to God. That could be capital G or lowercase g, or an object of worship. And I appreciated both of those. And I just would like to read like the last few lines of what I got this morning in my two-way prayer. And this is God's response to me. It says, I will always protect you. As your trust grows in connecting with me, you will be forever changed. You are on the right path. And I can tell you that was so comforting to me, that why would that didn't come out of my head. So, yes, it came through my spirit, but it's not my thinking. So thanks.
Yeah, that was beautiful. And thanks for sharing that with us. What a wonderful way, I think, to bring our little podcast to a close for the day. So thanks for listening to us all chat about our experience with two-way prayer this week. Like I said before, join our WhatsApp group. We'd love to help you, talk to you in any way that we can. We're happy to do it. And come back for our next podcast. We're going to start with step 1, and we're going to talk about the steps and do a different step each week. I think that'll be a good thing for us. I think we're at a point now where we should start talking about steps. Now that the podcast's over, you're probably thinking like, how can I reach out to these people? I need to talk to them. They're so awesome and amazing and hilarious. Well, you can send us an email at 164forever@gmail.com. And it's the numbers 164forever@gmail.com. I check that email pretty regularly. And again, we got the WhatsApp group, the website, the YouTube channel, the Podbean. So thanks so much, Rebecca and Paul and Megan, for joining me today. Thanks, guys. Yeah, if you think you're a compulsive eater, I highly recommend that you follow that. And the great thing about two-way prayer, I have to say, I think you can do it at any point. And the whole point of these steps is to get you in contact with a higher power. So start doing that, because I honestly feel once you get that conversation going, you're going to be led in the right direction, and it's going to help you in so many ways of your life. And you don't have to do all 12 steps and then hit step 11 and start practicing two-way prayer. That can be practiced at any time, no matter where you are in your recovery, your steps, brand new, first day, doesn't matter. Even if you're not in a 12-step program, give it a try. I found it to be super fun. Start the journey. Even if you don't feel willing, try it anyway. Don't wait for the willingness. Willingness is overrated. You deserve to recover, and you deserve to be happy and healthy, and we all do. So with that, we'll talk about step 1 next week. I'm going to reach out to some guests, and thank you. Thanks, everybody. Thanks for coming.
See y'all.
Megan's
Everyone,
waving.
thanks, Carol. I know.
Thanks.
Megan's waving to you all. I just thought I'd let you know. Megan waved. Okay.